Hey, well, let's get into this week's essay. Leadership is discovered, not declared. You know, one of the fastest ways that you can predict whether there's a leadership problem going on in your organization is that decisions are made by whim or vibe instead of some, evidence, detail. And that's particularly the case when it's around employees and potential promotion. One of the things that drives me nuts is when people have decided that somebody is or is not leadership material. And that's one of the symptoms of an organization that might be in some trouble is that they're labeling people instead of developing them. You'll hear things. I mean, I'm sure you've heard it. Things like, she's not, she doesn't have a leadership potential, or nah, there's no way he can manage. And many times, those give me pause because when you examine it a little bit, often those utterances are coming from somebody who is not doing a great leadership job on their own. And so, how good are they at actually judging? Now, lots of variation within this, but the problem that many leaders are having, or continue to have, is that they kind of reach this level and then they think, well, there's a lot to this and nobody else can do it. And you'll have organizations that get stuck kind of one extreme or the other. One is, and this is cliche, but you've seen the great sales rep is doing great at sales, and then they get promoted and become a sales manager, and they're lousy as a sales manager because they don't have the skill sets to manage people. They don't have the skill set to manage all the process and all that, or to lead people. And maybe they hate it. Maybe they were really great with sales. They're fine with rejection. They love talking with customers. They love innovative ideas and all that, but they're not so big into the problem solving. They're not so big into dealing with the day-to-day minutia that comes with leading people, perhaps. There's lots of reasons. And so we think somebody's got great performance, and so therefore they should be a great leader, like leader is some sort of capstone event. The other way around it is that we don't even consider people who could be potentially really good leaders. And this one probably drives me personally crazy a little bit more because I've just seen far too many people be, dismissed or disregarded or whatever, based surely or solely on whim of the leaders or from the decision makers. No evidence whatsoever. Or if there's evidence, it was they screwed up one time and they don't have the wherewithal to be able to explain what happened, what went wrong. And maybe it had nothing to do with them. Maybe they're covering for somebody or whatever it might be, right? My point being is that there are plenty of people who are capable of leading that have just never been given the chance to lead, nor the instruction on how to lead. One of the kind of beautiful things about this, I think, is that there are so many people who are very capable of leading. They just never knew that they could because nobody ever gave them permission. Now, I personally don't think you need permission to lead. You need consent of those who you are trying to lead, because if they're not following you, you're not really leading. But you should always be able to discover or to test to see if you're any good at leading. And so I think, a few symptoms of a lousy organization or an organization that's drifting a little bit is these things. They're either dictating, that they're not leadership potential for whatever reason. And it's not like they're balancing it against some sort of leadership competency model or something like that. It's just their gut. That's not a good, solid practice. The other one is promoting without any preparation. That's probably the most common, is that people like, hey, you did great at this, see if you can do this. And they just pile on and pile on and pile on. And, who wants to say, oh, I can't do this? Because it's this great honor to be esteemed with leadership, which I think we're missing the boat on that. And so it's just judging people before they're being coached. Before I get to sort of, this is a growth gap as far as leadership drift is concerned. It's organizations are evaluating leadership potential far more often than they're developing leaders. In other words, you get people who are like looking to fill roles or things like that, like they can do it, they can't do it. I don't like her. He's kind of, I don't know, and there's not any evidence behind their decisions, or it's very, very shaky or circumstantial. And so I think, leaders as a whole and organizations have to get better at kind of defining what does leadership look like in our organization. But going back to, uh, I mean, I've said it dozens of times, hundreds of times. There are all sorts of leader, right? There's self leadership, there's one on one leadership, there's team leadership, there's organizational leadership, and there's governance, right? These are all levels of leadership. So everybody's capable of leading in one of those levels, and some people are capable in multiple or all of those levels. All is rare, but able to lead. Uh, but you've got to discover that. You can't get thrust into it. And a lot of people just get thrust into it. And maybe they do well, and maybe they don't. And judging by engagement levels and issues and communication problems and things that keep me employed, a lot of people are thrown into it because they're trying to just, let's just get through the day and this person will help. They're fixing today's problem, not tomorrow's problem. And that's a growth gap. Those people who are not looking at succession planning carefully, they're not thinking strategically, they're not thinking about the needs of others. It's just, how can this be easier for me? Get this off my plate. And I think we can do better than that at this stage. So, I mean, the principle behind this is that leadership is learned through responsibility, coaching, and reflection, not speculation. You can't say, "Oh, I think they'd be a good leader," without giving some runway to, prove it or disprove it, or say, imagine this. Instead of saying, "Hey, you've done great. I've been monitoring you. You've been fabulous. We love everything that you're doing. Can you lead this new team?" And if they go, "Gee, I don't really know." No, what's one of the first questions? Is it more money? Does it pay more? So that becomes a consideration, right? Because you're paying more for it. But what if you're investing in just teaching them how to lead, how to problem solve, how to think things through a little bit, how to be more strategic, how to, what if you taught people how to lead, even if they weren't leaders? Wouldn't you prefer to have a team filled with people who are capable of leading? And big piece of being capable of leading is being a good follower. I mean, wouldn't that be a better team than just kind of holding it tight and say, well, as soon as a position opens, we're going to shove this person in and hope that they fit. We'll let the system kind of ground down the corners. Not a great strategy. So, I would get rid of the whim. I'd get rid of the speculation. I'd get rid of your gut, however great you think it is. It's not. And start creating some metrics or rubric, whatever it is, that says this is what good leadership looks like. This is the type of leadership we're going to need, and start creating some criteria around it, and then test that criteria. Probably test yourself against that criteria as well. So I'd leave you with 3 questions that you'd want to look at, kind of reflect on, sort of reflections on leadership. One is, are you developing leaders or just judging them? As you're thinking about the positions that are coming due, or replacements that you have to make, or growth that's going on, are you, again, we've said it a bunch of times, are you just saying, "Oh yeah, I think they'd be good because it's set design, they look like they'd play that role," or are they actually potentially good leaders? Or, and are they good leaders? You see it, but they don't see it yet, which is going to take some work, but is well worth the effort, versus somebody who thinks, "Yeah, put me in, I'm the greatest," and still think they're greatest as revenue is dipping and customers are leaving. Weigh the pros and cons. The second question to you would be, who deserves an opportunity to discover their leadership potential? In other words, are you creating an environment where people can kind of discover, hey, maybe you could lead this. So can you lead this committee? Can you lead this meeting? Can you run this meeting every week? Do some things that are testing the leadership and allowing people to grow and see how they like it, and giving people more responsibility. And you may be surprised. You might be validated too. It's like, yeah, I thought they would stink and they stink. Well, good. Now they know, everybody knows. That conversation doesn't have to be had anymore. They can be extremely valuable individual contributor. I mean, I think that's one of the things that we're doing is we're taking leadership and you're putting it up on this higher level that it doesn't need to be. There are plenty of very successful, financially, emotionally, mentally, individual contributors. You don't have to be a leader to be successful. In fact, frequently far less stress. And there's also, if you just kind of look around the world, there are more people who are not leading than there are people who are leading. And, good and bad. Third and final question, are your promotions based on readiness or convenience? I find this, it kind of runs across the board. The larger the company, sometimes they take forever, but it's not like they're being careful. They're just taking forever because of bureaucracy or whatever it might be. But they're still filling position for convenience. And whether that's a convenience because, these types of customers don't like this type of person or whatever, so we can't hire this person, so we can't promote this person, they've got to be like this. Okay, that's about convenience. That's not skill set based on can this person lead or not. Or is it, hey, hair's on fire and buildings burning down and all sorts of stuff, and we got to get a leader in here to stop all the bleeding because I'm tired of sleepless nights. Um, Again, that's about convenience, right? So who do you have who's ready? How do you know that they're ready? So again, I'd reflect on these questions a little bit and think it through. Again, leadership, you should give people enough dignity to let them discover or help them discover, guide them and say, hey, I think you might be a good leader. Let's test that. Oh, you know what? Maybe not right now. Or I think you might be a good leader. Let's test it. Holy crap, you can have my job. Anyway, just a few things to think about. I think we're not giving people enough credit, and we got to kind of slow down a little bit. So I'd take a look at these 3 questions, reflect on them fairly regularly, and until then, lead well.